Can art help you trace your family roots? Well, apparently so. It can give you the sense of time frame. It can talk about what ceremonies are happening, all kinds of interesting things. And we're going to find out just how to read art for your family history research. We have Miss Holly T. Hansen, the Gen teacher and president of Family History Expos, with us today. And she's one of our experts, Big Blend Radio and TV Magazine and Parks and Travel Magazine. In fact, she's got an article on art for family history research. It's up on blendradioandtv.com right now. It's also going to be featured in the summer issue of Big Blend Radio and TV Magazine. And the thing to go to is her website, familyhistoryexpos.com. She has all kinds of cool online events, in-person events, all kinds of online resources to help you trace your family history. Hey, Holly, how's it going?
Hey, things are going good here. It's a beautiful day. The sun's shining. We're finally out of the rain.
Well,
We've had a lot of
rain,
snow
I think
and
the
rain.
last time you were like, you had snow out there in Utah.
Yeah, it's been snowing and raining every day since I talked to you last.
Yeah, wow.
But
wow.
Blue skies and sunshine today. It's beautiful.
Cool. Oh, lovely, lovely. So this is interesting, talking about art and family history research, and you've got an article up on blendradioandtv.com now where people can see it, and it's interesting because you have all these different paintings that go according to different marriage ceremonies and what was going on in those time frames. So is it really mostly with marriage, or does art, different kinds of art help in your family history?
I just use marriage as an example, but every type of art. I mean, when I really want to understand, to do family history, you really have to understand history. Some people, when they get started, they get a chart and they put their name and their parents' names and their grandparents' names, and they kind of start looking at names and dates. Well, as soon as you're out of the realm of people and you have to look for people that nobody has a memory of, it's a whole different ball game, and you just can't match names. And you really have to understand the history. It really helps you if you know what's going on in the lives of your ancestors. Were your ancestors illiterate? Were they educated? Were they, those kinds of things help. And to see art, the past is a foreign place. It's just like learning a new language, because the way they live their lives, their politics, their socioeconomical situation is totally different than what we understand and know today. And, I always like to read the newspapers, and I'll read the whole paper for days and weeks just to kind of get a feel for what's going on, and you begin to understand who the players are in the community. I like to look at art, and especially in early time periods, they're not photographs. So okay. you get to look at paintings and art, cherry records. And when they paint the horses and the guns and all of that, it gives you a whole different feeling for what these people have gone through. And today, we just don't see horses like they used. Every day they were riding a horse, everything they did, and the horses were powerful. They had a lot of muscle. And, horses today that just graze in a pasture or get fed hay, they're not powerful like it was in those days before. And thinking about, and I grew up riding horses and riding stallions, and a stallion is a very powerful horse. But I just, when I look at the paintings and the pictures of some of these,
the war horses,
colonial time, we don't see things like that today.
It's interesting because, to me, it's that sense of feeling. So, I know we've talked about this on shows before, but I think it's important as part of the research is you want to know who that person is. It's like being a private investigator. So you know someone's habits and routines and what they would be interested in. So because won't that help you go on a different direction? Like, I would never have thought they would be interested in that. But getting to understand that time frame, there's like a visual. It gives you an atmosphere of what people would have done. It
does. It helps you. It helps you to get into the culture, to see what's going on. It's like there was one time when I was at Colonial Williamsburg, I went into the wig shop, and this first painting that's in the article, Marriage by Contract. We have these wealthy families that are negotiating a marriage contract, and it's not the bride and groom, it's the parents.
Yeah.
And the gentlemen have their wigs on, and it just reminded me of being in Colonial Williamsburg when they said the term bigwig comes from the wigs that they wore in this time period, and the bigger the wig, the more important or status that the person had. And that's just a little small thing, but it helps you to understand. If you look at this painting of marriage by contract, just knowing a little bit of history about what's going on, you begin to see, and a marriage by contract took place because they were going to protect the property. You know, when a marriage takes place, it involves property, and that's why marriage is so important.
Prenup.
That's why we hear
and
so much
everyone get
about
a prenup.
it today. That's right. And so, you know, and this isn't anything new. We might think it is, but it really isn't. And people who have a lot of holdings, they're going to take care of that. And they would contract their children when they were infants to marry into the family that they wanted, that would make them more powerful. And so,
wow, so that you'll know if your family, you know, then you know, okay, start looking for property records, and you know, if they've got a big wig, you know there's money out there. There's land, there's property, there's livestock, there's probably slaves at that time too, right? If they have a big wig. I never thought about the wigs. I never thought about that.
And when we lived in Kenya and I worked for a lawyer, and I used to go to court, the first time I walked in, I was just flabbergasted at their courtroom setup, because the judges where they sat were far higher up than the rest of us. We were like sitting 2 feet below them. So they were huge. They were already lifted up on this pedestal, and then they had this great big desk. They all had gavels. And then they were both Africans and whites. Across the board, they all had these long, powdered, white curly wigs on, and I thought that was hysterical. You know, I'm looking at it, it's like, what is this? I mean,
I don't know if they still do that now.
I bet you they do.
I bet they do.
It's kind of a British
thing.
Do.
Oh, wow.
But
they still do it in Great Britain. They still do it over there.
Yeah, so then they probably still do it in Kenya then.
I remember when Ward Heinrich...
it's part of, it's like they wear their robes. They wear their robes.
Yeah.
Their judicial robes. And
it's wild.
It's interesting.
And it just totally says, I am higher up than you across the board. Don't even dare to look at me until you're called on. Wow. Well, that's exactly what it's like.
That's why we always teased Ward when he first came on our show. The Ward Heinrich, the employment attorney, he's our law expert. And every time he'd come on, we're like, are you wearing your wig? He goes, Nancy and Lisa, that doesn't happen here, and I'm an attorney. You know, I'm not a judge. You know?
Yeah.
So he had to educate us a little bit, because we just had to mess with him a bit. But, you know, because we just want to see him in a wig, you know, because that's funny. You know,
I can Photoshop one on there.
Oh, you should do that.
Yeah.
You should do that, Tim.
Yeah.
But that is such a, you know, and I think that's the thing, is it's about attention to detail when it comes to family history, and I just didn't really realize that art was part of that. So we talk about art in history all the time in our shows. I didn't think about using what you're seeing in a painting to help you, get more leads.
I use art as I teach different aspects of family history, this specifically on marriage, so that you get the feeling of what's going on, and to realize how important it is to know, not just a name and a date. But people do what we call name matching, and they'll say same name, same person. That's not true. And you've got to be really careful and understand the status of your family and who they were hanging out with. People usually marry people in the same, similar income bracket, you know.
Yes.
We see all of these young peasant girl falls in love with a rich master's son, and they get married and live happy ever after. It doesn't really happen that way very much. Especially in historic times. I even think today, you know, people that have masses of money, they're going to protect it and guard it, and they want you to marry in your station, and I see that.
Yeah, I think it's really true. And there's still, I mean, across the country, not so much in this country in America, but there's still arranged marriages, and in different cultures, and some of it. Sometimes it's an arranged marriage. The two parents get together, and sometimes it actually works better than a non-arranged marriage. But a lot of times it could be that's not what I want. Here's, a young 13-year-old marrying a 70-year-old. That's not cool.
Yeah,
that's
if you're
fair.
willing to let someone choose your mate, you're willing to get along with people.
Well, that's true. Well,
unless you give an outline, it must be this, or this.
But yeah,
don't be bringing me anybody with no money.
I know, but also, that you're in it together. And we've done so many shows on arranged marriages. It's fascinating because there's ones that really go wrong if you're with someone that's abusive, and you don't want to marry a rapist or something like that, and that can happen.
Right.
But on the flip side, there could be a couple that are in the same age bracket, same education zone, and then they go, okay, well, we're in this together, so we might as well win it and get along, and what are we going to do to get along? And so there's a heavier conversation than sometimes the emotional, oh, I love you, let's run off into the desert and, whatever.
Yes, which that's what we call marriage by declaration or hand fasting. And that's where you run off to the Gretna Green or to the place, like you said, Tucson, where you didn't have to have all the hassle. You could just go and get married without everybody checking up on you. And historically, where we get the word Gretna Green, we're always talking about Gretna Green marriages. It's a place that you could go get married without the hassle. And people from England, they'd go over into Scotland, into Gretna Green, and get married. And the picture, the painting that we have of that one is in a blacksmith shop. And the preacher was a blacksmith, and people would come and he'd do the marriage and hit the anvil. And every time the anvil rang, everybody in town knew that another marriage took place. And there's quite a fascinating history of the city of Gretna Green and all of that goes on. And they were still doing that as recently as 1940. And
maybe
so to see a
people
picture of someone standing in a blacksmith shop, a painting in a blacksmith shop getting married is kind of it tells a story.
Well, I want to do a thing on blacksmith shops because what I learned in Louisiana at the Magnolia Plantation, which is there's two plantations that's part of the Cane River Creole National Historical Park. And Nathan, who we're going to be interviewing soon, Nancy, Park Ranger Nathan, who's now in Chaco. Anyway, he took us to the blacksmith cabin or shack or,
the livery stable.
Yeah, and there's all these carvings on it, and apparently it's haunted, like big time. And but he took us in there, and he goes, this is where everything went down. This is the most important place because this is how everybody communicated. Black, white, didn't matter. This is where the true communication. It's like, the cafes in Europe. That's where things happened, where people could get away with speaking to each other when they, couldn't. That's where it went
the
down.
Coffee shop.
And that's how news
got passed on. It was the blacksmith shop.
And that's probably because people were so connected to, you had to have a horse in order to get around.
And
you
had to get things
keep
fixed.
It shod, and they threw their shoes often, so you had to go to the blacksmith shop to get it fixed. That's where all the political banter took place. That's where you learned about what's going on in the community. And
wow.
And
so when you see a painting of a blacksmith, then you could use that and go, okay, if they're in the blacksmith shop all the time, they're the gossiper of the town.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, really interesting. So you've got these paintings. So this hand fasting ceremony. So that's the Gretna Green one where off they go. Or am I getting that muddled up? Yeah. So they go.
They go to some little community, some place that doesn't require. Today it would be too young. You have to have your parents' signature. You're too closely related, you can't marry each other. There are all these laws that you have to meet, and Gretna Green doesn't ask any of those questions. They just go marry you. I mean, this could be a clandestine marriage. Like, let's say you were married to someone else and you'd run off and left him. You could go get another wife, and no, the other wife, and doesn't even know about it. No one's asking
you mean
questions.
you're getting
There's nobody...
our family history then,
Well,
my
those
dad
kind of
hung
things
up.
happen a lot. Happen a lot.
Wow.
More than you'd
so
think,
Yeah.
Well,
I've had people ask me to help them trace their grandfather disappeared, and they just would like to know, did he die? What happened to him? And you start looking at the records, and you find out he has another family. Well, they were never divorced, but he married again and has a whole other family. I mean, and this is in today's world, and you introduce these siblings to each other, and it's pretty tough sometimes.
Wow. So
and
that
that's
is
nothing
a normal
new.
thing.
People have done it for centuries.
Okay, so it wasn't because we were wondering, and we've met other people, like even on the shows, there seems to be like in the 40s, the late 30s into the 40s, 1940s, that there was this rash of it going on everywhere. And we've done interviews with people, and we're like, oh my gosh, that's just exactly what happened in our family. And we're like, was it something that happened in that era? Was it because, of the world wars that all of a sudden everybody did naughty things, or what was it? But now you're saying this is just human beings who have been doing this forever. Like it's got nothing to do with life events other than somebody wanted to hook up with somebody else.
I think those things have an impact. They have an impact. But when there's war going on, there's more awful things that people do because of PSTDs. It never had a name before, right? PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It didn't have a name before. We have a name for it now, but boys come home from fighting a war, and they're so stricken.
Yeah.
They act strange. Maybe they become mixed up in drugs and alcohol. This is not new. It used to be laudanum. It used to be rum, whatever, to deaden your senses because it was so horrific. And so, you're going to see more of that. And they come home and they have these nightmares in the middle of the night, and the wife can't deal with it. And maybe they hurt.
And they haven't been home
for their family,
years.
So they leave because they don't want to hurt them anymore. There's a lot of reasons that it happens, but war certainly has an effect on those kind of things. But when has our world been without war?
Yeah, I wish it would stop it.
Oh no, really.
When you look at the paintings, these war paintings, that really does, and we've covered that with Victoria too. Victoria Chick, who's coming on a little later here, and when you look at it, you start to realize just how war is. We're hurting each other. I don't care if it's the atom bomb or this kind of drone thing or whatever. But there's something about war, the way we fought wars way back when, where just march up to each other and shoot each other. That was just so, it's all horrible to me, but that was really brutal. And, using a dead body to shield yourself from getting shot and things like that, that is going to live with you forever. And I don't think people can just get over that. And you don't want to recognize it. And I think when you look again at those kind of paintings, you've got to understand sometimes, artists are there at a war and have taken notes and are able to, reconstruct that. That cyclorama by the painters Philip Pateau. Wow, check that out. I remember that name.
For you.
In Gettysburg was the first diorama. It's like this. It's huge. It's a 360-degree painting of the Battle of Gettysburg, and they were so into researching that it had to be 100% that they even interviewed families and things for that painting. And so when you're looking around, you may find your ancestor truly in that painting.
In the painting,
and then that gives you this understanding of maybe why a family moved, where, or that kind of thing. You've really opened my eyes to this.
I have a story for you. We have a family history that's been handed down through our family that Henry Schaefer was my husband's family. Now I haven't verified this is true. Given to me by my mother-in-law and had been handed down through the generations that he was the bowman for George Washington's ship crossing the Delaware. And so one day I was at a high school doing a special history thing, and I saw this painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware, and I went and bought one for my husband because whether this story is true or not, it's impactful in our family that we're part of that whole experience of George Washington. And I I've got it hanging in my living room. It's like, this is your grandfather, and he helped George Washington cross that river at a critical time in the history of our country. And so
Do
I
they
teach
look alike?
my family. Well, I don't have any paintings of him, you know, but the story is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the painting, I thought, you know, I don't know who those men were, but if that was our grandfather, we want that in our home, because it's a really powerful lesson to teach history. And I think we need to teach more history. And paintings give you that feeling. Just to read words, it's not the same.
Wouldn't it be cool in schools if they took young kids and instead of here's all the dates you get to memorize before the test,
Exactly,
they taught them to research their own family history? I think it would be really, really cool for kids.
Ooh,
we're
because
starting
then
to
they'd
see
be
more of that
interested.
happen. You know,
That's cool.
I get asked occasionally to come and talk to younger kids that are in high school and middle school, especially the middle school age.
Yeah.
I think there's an appreciation of understanding how you're made up. You know, when we watched the Roots Finding Your Roots show the other night, and watching, you know, it was a journalist and Dr. Phil and Questlove. I love that musician, and watching them actually get to understand who they were, especially Questlove, really, you know, wanted to know his family history and realized, and they were showing, you know, this is the last boat that came in, or slave ship, and they were able to trace his family to that, but everything that they used to show was artwork from back then. And so in a way, that's really the only thing we have. When you're saying, there was no photographs at the time, when we really go back, you know, that's all you have. And then he's like going, you know, looking at how he was talking about the horses, just like you actually. He was talking about, look at the horses like that. Now this isn't what we are. Look how hard they were working. They would show the camps, and he was just like, gosh, I thought like I put in a really long day, but like that's nothing compared to what they went through back then. So in some regards,
think about if you watch somebody doing weightlifting, and you see you could envision this of the muscles in their arms and their legs and how tight their torso is, and definition of every single muscle. These horses that were working and pulling and running and carrying people, their muscles were fine-tuned and honed like that, chiseled. And so you could see the definite lines of where those layers of muscles were. And it's just, I mean, I've seen race horses, and they have to be similar to that, because they're run every day, their work, their exercise, they really work to have good, strong muscles so that they don't hurt their legs when they run. And so it's kind of that kind of thing. I just don't think we get it.
Well, we're removed now. I mean, there are obviously some people who still have horses and ride them for fun, you know, and then you've got races and jockeys, but, you know, it's not like we have to get on a horse to go to work.
Think about being on a mule. Think about being on, you know, on those wagons coming across, and as a woman wearing all those clothes in the desert heat. No, thank you. No, I don't want to do that. And then like, oh, look, there's a rattlesnake over there. Oh, what's that? I come from England, and I'm going through the desert, and I'm covered in all these clothes and dealing with snakes.
But the artwork tells you, if you look, especially when you're looking at the women in artwork, what they were wearing. It's totally different than, I mean, you don't see any paintings back then of mini skirts, you know. And you don't see like stripes and polka dots and prints. You see, oh, here's my brown dress, here's my black dress, here's my white dress.
Well, I think it's interesting because the Gretna Green picture that you have, the red hot marriage in the blacksmith shop, right? Just looking at the expressions, you know, that, okay, the blacksmith's doing the whole, you know, thing, and while in the meantime the horse is getting shod, even while this ceremony is going on, and there's this little dude looking at them with this like, are you seriously going to get married? Look, he's just looking at him like, what are you doing? What are you getting yourself into? The face. I mean, that's the thing. The expression that artists can give and capture is absolute. You can't beat it because they just go, oh, this is what's going on. That guy's thinking this.
Well,
you know?
and did somebody model for those
Exactly. Did they
pictures?
model? Because
Because it's like, okay, you're a blacksmith now. Dress up like one and stand there for 25 hours while I try to get your face right.
yeah. And then the marriage by ceremony painting. She looks like an angel. I mean, she's just that light coming through. I love that painting of her. She's got that innocence look. And then you've got people gossiping behind her in that painting. And then here's the young girl with the flower bouquet going, all eager about what's going on, but there's a couple gossiping in the background. Either that or it's the parents going, she's really doing it.
Yeah.
My grandmother had an arranged marriage, and she told me that she got married when she was 13 to my grandfather, who was 26. And then they came to the States. And she told me that when the marriage was arranged, she had no choice or any say in the matter because she was only 13. So she was too young to say anything, but young and, old enough to marry some old dude. And the only thing she kept telling her parents was she wanted her own room because she came from a large family, and they were all crowded into one room, all the girls. Mm-hmm. And so she was sharing with all her sisters. And she was all excited because she got married, and that penny didn't drop on what that meant. But she got her own room, and she kept her own room throughout their entire marriage in different houses. I have my own room. That she used to say to me, no matter what happens, get your own room.
Wow. I'm with her on that.
That is good advice.
Get
your own room and get a lock.
Well, and but you'll get more sleep, and it's don't get me started. I want to go back to the marriage by ceremony because you talk about this in your article. So that's normally at a church, the bride and groom getting together. It's normally a religious ceremony, and you say it's after
right, and
proclamation.
This is where they proclaim bans, which means they put on the church door that this marriage is going to take place 2 weeks. And if anybody has a problem, they need to come forward and say, he's already got a wife 2 counties over, or if there's a problem, they'll come forth. And that's why the people do the Gretna Greens, because they don't want all their stuff being discussed. But the marriage by ceremony, people, they come in, but it has to be approved. The preacher has to approve it. Parents have to, everything has to be approved, and there's a waiting period and all of that.
Now, don't they do? I mean, don't they say during a religious ceremony now in a church, they say if anybody has a something to say it now, or speak it, or
or forever hold your
forever
peace.
Hold your peace.
Yeah, do they still do that, right? And so it's like, but it's that day off. It's not, hey, everything's tacked to the church door, on the bulletin board where they're selling sheep and goats at the same time.
Right, exactly right.
So that's.
But now, I mean, you have to get a license now to get married, I believe.
In our country,
you have to go get a license like a driver's
permit. And you did historically. That's one of the things we use to research as we look for those licenses. And it'll tell you in the license if they're married by the JP, which is the Justice of the Peace, if they're married by a minister of the gospel, MG, it'll have an MG. And depending on what faith it is, that gives you some clues. That helps you with your research, because if you find the marriage license and you don't really know what religion they are, but it says MG, and the guy's signature's there, you go look him up in the census and see where did he live and what was his occupation, and it usually will say minister of the Presbyterian Church or something. Then I can go look for those records because there'll be more records on the family there.
Wow. This is interesting because now there was this ceremony, and I remember a friend of ours did it, and she was into Celtic stuff, and she said that she did this, and they jumped over brooms or something.
Oh yeah.
Remember the broom?
The jumping of the broom.
Is that the same as hand fasting in a way? I mean, they did it legally.
Similar. Yes, it is. More like hand fasting.
Okay. So I was just wondering about that. But
Now,
then, okay,
in other countries where you have a state church, the church is the rule, right? That's where, in America, we have the separation of church and state. So the government can't tell you what religion you are. But in a state church, the church is the government. And so when you got married by ceremony, that was the government giving you the license to marry there, right, in the church. So it's a little different here in America because we have to go to the county and pick up a license, where in another country where they have a state church, the church is where it's all, they're the political, they keep track of all the the births and marriages and the baptisms, the christenings, whatever.
Yeah, you can get married
in our country. You don't
courthouse.
have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't.
Right.
You can get married in a courthouse
and so that's
here
the marriage
or
by license.
anywhere without a priest or any religious, input at all. You can just go get your license, and they have a person there that can marry you, and you don't have to even have your family.
Well, a lot of times military families will do that.
Yeah, they have a chaplain.
Well, I had a religious ceremony when I was married, but we were required to go to the courthouse and get a marriage license, and we took that to the man that married us, and he still had to fill out all the paperwork and give it back so it's registered in the court. But our marriage license that we received was a religious one with a picture of our, the building and it wasn't the marriage license that came from the courthouse.
Yeah.
Because they met the law by filling out we had to fill out the application. The marriage was performed. The return was sent back to the courthouse, but we got a different license just because it was a religious ceremony, and that's how they did it.
You got the pretty one.
Yeah, we got the really pretty one that we could frame.
I did a courthouse one, and it didn't last. So there you go.
Nice.
Family gossip on Big Blend Radio. Yeah, but it was interesting. But then we did another little thingy anyway. But when it comes, it was a long time ago. It's in the vault.
Not anymore.
Yeah, but it's interesting to me because when you look at how religion changed in this country too, I mean it's different. So what happens? In regards to, I know we're talking about art, but what happens if, when, in the slavery days, where, slaves wanted to hook up and get married. I mean, were they able to back then? I mean, how did that happen for them?
They jumped the broomstick. They did their own thing. They weren't allowed, a lot of times they weren't allowed to have a civil ceremony.
That's a pity, man.
And it's different. It's different. Some of the plantations, they had their own church on their plantation, and they required all of their slaves to go to church. And some of them allowed them to be married and be families, and some didn't.
It's got to be hard. It's got to be so hard for, African Americans to trace their roots. It's got to be some of the hardest to do. And
the same with Native Americans because of the changing of their names to Christian names.
But here's the thing where art plays a role with Native American heritage is their art forms. Everybody has signatures and styles. Art tells you everything, just the different pottery, and it'll tell you what tribe you're in by the design. And the Pueblo work. I was always told that my second great grandmother, one of them, was Native American, and I was lucky enough to inherit a pair of gloves that she made. They had intricate beadwork. They were leather. They told me that she tanned the leather by chewing the leather, and it's the softest leather I have ever touched. It still today is very soft, but it has all this beadwork. I took and had professional photos taken of that and then sent it to see if we could identify the tribe by the type of beadwork that was done. And experts, tell me that she was probably of one of the Iroquois nations, but I have not still been able to pin down that other than, I have an idea rather than Cherokee or some other tribe, but
Can you get DNA off the gloves?
I wonder, but I wonder.
Yeah, because she probably wore them, and if she chewed them, to make the leather, I bet there's
she
DNA.
gave them to my grandfather, who was her youngest grandchild, and he used to wear them and haul hay with them. The fingers their holes worn in them because they were used.
Yeah.
And
well,
I think,
yeah.
But they still exist, they still exist, and
we'll get some DNA tests and see.
Yeah, that would.
Ooh.
That's a really good suggestion. So.
This is so fascinating because I don't know how you ever pull out of it, because it's that research part, and it's interesting research because it's like, okay, this is your family, or I know that you work with other families to help them, but it's all it's like this is a cool story. And I always think that authors, some authors, when you're doing historical novels and things like that, you have to get into the family history.
Oh yeah.
And the art helps again with that, And look at Mona Lisa, and what people are still drawn to her smile. And what was she smiling about? It makes you sit and think. And I think that's the other part of art and your family history, is it makes you think in a different way. You say that in the very beginning of your article, how it opens your mind.
Yeah.
Art opens your mind. And you could be going down a dead end.
It gives you, we're so visual in our world today. We grew up with television and movies, and it's just around us. We're absorbed by that. And to read a book and imagine, I have a pretty good imagination, but art makes it instant. You get a snapshot, you get a slice. And the more you look at it, the more bigger picture that you get. But I think you need to understand history. I think you need to use art. I think you should read the newspapers and get a feeling for the political climate that your family's living in. What if your ancestors were glass blowers?
Yeah, that does tell you something.
Why would
actually an ancient
art. Why would
art.
that be important to know what their occupation is? Glass blowers only live in certain places. So if you lost your job, where are you going to go looking for a job? In another place that they do that kind of thing. And it's the same with a blacksmith. If your shop burns down and you've got to find work, you're not going to become a guy that drives a ship. You're not going to become a.
Yeah.
It's with mining. You work in the mines. You go from one mine to another to another. People don't change from being a blacksmith to a miner. It's even today in our world, it's a big deal to change your career path. It's huge. It's very difficult to do.
And don't forget, we didn't live as long as we do now. Now we've
we're getting bigger and living
I just
longer.
say we've been tickling ourselves with all the chemicals in the food, but
we get. Why are we so much bigger today? I mean, when you look in the museums and you see women's clothing, especially their shoes.
I can't stand it.
I know their shoes. I'm like, who fits that? It's
know. My hand is bigger.
Yeah.
It's because they didn't have good food, and they didn't get to eat things that we have. We just have access to so much, and their growth was stunted. And I mean, and the if you're out going across the country in a wagon and set up a homestead in the prairie, you really don't have that much food, and you're going to have to grow food, and you're going to have to wait for the food to grow before you can harvest. It's just like you're going to live on rice, and it's just not easy. It's like, but I wanted to ask you, going back to art, what about things like toll painting? Wouldn't that tell you that your family, if you get you go through the attic, grandma's attic, and you find these things, maybe embroidery and lace. Yeah.
Wouldn't that tell you some stories of maybe like folk art too? Art like crafts. Wouldn't that tell you where?
We have a whole class that we talk about the handwork that people do, and how that will guide you and help you with your family history. Oh yeah, there's a lot.
Because
in Kentucky, they had what we call coffin quilts. Have you ever heard of that? Coffin?
No.
Quilts.
It's a coffin
wow.
quilt, and this was a wedding. This was a wedding gift when the bride got married, and it was usually black, and it had on the outside edge of it were these coffins, like they looked like kind of like lace, but they were each single and they were attached. And because death was such a part of that early life, and so you'd be given this quilt, and then as a family member would die, you'd embroider the name on it and sew the coffin in. It had in the middle, it had a fence. It was like a little fence, and there was a graveyard in the middle of this quilt. And you'd take it off of the outside edge, put their name on it, and then sew it onto your quilt. And it has their family history. They're amazing.
Wow.
Go Google
That's
it. You'll
cool.
find them. Coffin
Oh my
quilts.
gosh, I'm gonna go
It's
look
another
for 'em.
form of art.
Wow. Wow, because the barn quilt tour, they have in Kentucky this barn quilt trail, because quilts tell you family history too. Like they'll do
Yes,
that.
they do.
It's like here's this whole thing of what a family went through just on a quilt, I'd love to delve into that. That's fascinating. But Kentucky has this barn quilt tour where there's quilts that go with the family history of the farm, and they paint these boards. It's not an actual quilt, and they put it up on the barn. And I think they do it. It started in Ohio, but it's been this movement that's kind of new, new and old at the same time. And so when we get to Kentucky, we'll look for that. And that's kind of what I was thinking of, was just the style of painting tells you the time frame, and just the type of, like, I know Pennsylvania Dutch, right, is the toll painting, right? Isn't that a period
German.
of time?
Pennsylvania Dutch, they're German, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're Dutch.
They're not Dutch.
Okay.
Because, in Germany, it's not Germany. They call it Deutschland.
Right.
And that's how it comes across. But, it's interesting. But there's so much that we could talk about. I just took this small little specter on marriage. It's not much. But
you opened our minds.
Pervasive. Art really does help us a lot. And there's so many. In my bedroom, I have a Navajo wedding picture. It's a clock. It's a sand painting that my brother gave me as a gift, that if somebody comes into my house and they're going to see that and they're going to wonder, did she just like that? But this is a family thing. And I have a foster brother who came to live with us when he was 12 years old, and he's stayed very close to our family, and he gave that to me as a gift, because I'd always say, I love those sand paintings. I'd sometime like to get one, and he gave that to my husband and I for one of our wedding anniversaries. Have you ever seen the Navajo wedding pitcher that you drink out of?
Yeah.
It's got two openings, so the bride and the groom both can drink out of it.
Yeah.
So it's not. Yeah, it's something that contains water, but it's a clock. But it is the sand painting of one of those, and he gave that to us as an anniversary gift, which
nice.
It's really special, So you just collect interesting forms of art, but they all have stories behind them.
I agree. It's you just think about, you're talking about, how the pictures are with the husband and wife can drink out of. It's like the unity candles in a wedding ceremony, and we have a friend who's a candle maker, and we got all into the history of candle making as an art form. Oh my gosh, that's a whole thing.
It's a whole other thing.
That's a whole.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, and I think we inherit things over the years, these keepsakes and treasures, and you go, well, what's that about? And from that, you start to understand. Even Bibles have different artwork that will tell you the time frame of when the Bible was printed. The type of paper, and the book cover.
And it gives you clues to your family, because if you were a Catholic or Methodist, all of that gives you clues,
Wow. Fascinating stuff.
It's the same with names, like Ignatius. I have an ancestor whose name's Ignatius. Well, Saint Ignatius. Ignatius, you're going to think that's a Catholic family, because Methodists and Presbyterians don't name their children after the saints of the Roman Catholic Church, and so it's kind of interesting. But unless you study history, you miss those clues.
Mm.
There's a lot. There's a lot that's going on that you can miss if you're not familiar with what's going on around you.
But tracing your family history does teach you history, and I think that's one of the coolest things about it, because it does open your mind, like you're saying, how art opens our mind to it. Because you can get into a dead end, and then a painting can make you think in a different way. It's like, hey, okay, wait, let's check this out, you know. I want everyone to know about your upcoming events. You have your weekly Ask the Pros, which I know you do on Fridays too. And everyone, if you go to familyhistoryexpos.com, that's a place to go. You've got, of course, every third Friday here on Big Blend Radio, we have our Family History Show. But also in August 5th through 10th, you have the Let Your Light Shine 2019 International Family History Expo. It's going to be exciting, man. This is your second, one online, and last year was amazing. I couldn't believe how many countries you represented and how many eras. I mean, it's epic, Holly, to do this.
It's fun. It's really fun. It's a lot of work, and it's really fun. I probably learn more than everybody else, but I love it. It's fun.
She geeks out.
And there's a
Holly
lot of information for people.
She just geeks out on history. And the thing is, everyone can do this online. And so you don't have to go anywhere. You can just tap in online and check it out. And it's so cool because it's like going to a true expo on our website. You can go to little booths and connect with the people in the booths. It's so cool. So everyone, familyhistoryexpos.com, and again, that's August 5th through 10th, and then November 18th through 23rd, you have your Family History Library Research Retreat, and that's important too. So you understand how to do that. Yeah. And we've got to keep our libraries, everybody. I'm just saying.
Well, that's our history.
I know.
That's right.
Our history. So thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, again, Holly's article is up on BlendRadio and TV.com. You can see the paintings we were talking about. You'll see Holly listed and linked in our expert department, and you can click from there to different articles or just type art and family history in the search box, and you'll find it. And everybody, we're going to play some music. We always like to find some family history-themed music for the show. And today, yours is called Da Da Da. And it's a song for her father. Lizzie Harrow wrote it. She is from the Madisons, based out in the Smoky Mountain region of Tennessee, and we're going to hopefully see her this year. And she wrote it for her dad. And normally we play this around Father's Day, but I thought, let's do it. This is family history, and it goes with her dad. And it's a single. You can learn more about the Madisons. Go to madisonsmusic.com. Thanks so much for joining us, Holly.
Thank you. I look to it every month. I'll see you next month.
We do, too. We do, too. All right, here it is. Da da da.
Making sure that the lights are